of the Johannesburg Mayor, Mpho Phalatse, who's now been replaced by the ANC's Dada Morero. He's expecting to be voted in tomorrow. Of course, it's left many people continuing to question then the future of coalition governments in the country. Political analyst Sandile Swana joins us for more on this conversation. Good evening to you. Thanks for your time tonight, Mr. Swana. It's interesting to see the language that has been used by both, you know, the Democratic Alliance and also the ANC in the midst of, you know, the shake-up in the city of Johannesburg. Earlier tonight, DA leader John Steenhuisen describing the move as a power grab by the ANC. And of course, the ANC itself not having very kind words for the Democratic Alliance. I mean, is this just the culture of our politics? Should we accept it as such? Can it not be different?
The first thing that I will say is that there is research that shows that certainly in the African continent, since the 1960s until today, that the most successful form of government to produce results in terms of improving the quality of life of residents has been a coalition government. So, and coalition governments have been very successful in Germany and elsewhere in Europe and so on. So there is nothing inherently wrong with a coalition government. However, when we come to South Africa for the time being, and Mandela did observe this, that certainly that first of all, since 1990, the criminal element has entered the political space, opportunists and careerists who joined the ANC and perhaps even joined other parties, and also the business community. So our coalitions are being born in an atmosphere of criminality and dominated by dishonest persuasion. So, we can do better, but in order to do better, we do need to reduce the amount of dishonest persuasion, bribery, and corruption in how power is taken after an election, because there's not been an election, but the ANC is taking power from the DA. So during this time, in between elections, corrupt power grabs can happen. Political mistakes can also come about.
So how do we begin then to characterize the changes, number one, as corrupt? Because if we're then looking a bit more broadly, one can look at what happened in Nelson Mandela Bay, where, of course, the DA's mayor has recently been installed. And so there are different dynamics that are at play, depending on where you're looking at in the country. So is that not a feature of coalition governments that are unstable in their nature, as what we have seen in this country?
The issue of Nelson Mandela Bay, you must remember that as we speak now, Athol Trollip was removed from power in Nelson Mandela Bay. But as we speak today, the courts are busy arranging to prosecute people who were involved in corrupt activities that removed Athol Trollip from power, who was representing the DA coalition at the time, replaced by Bobani, who unleashed a wide-ranging coalition. So it was coalition before the ousting of Trollip and coalition in the period after Trollip was removed from power. So the issue of coalition being collapsed by corruption, it does exist. Further point on Nelson Mandela Bay, when I started interacting with Nelson Mandela Bay municipality, it was around 2007. The municipality, without any coalition in Nelson Mandela Bay, was unstable and non-performing around 2007 without any coalition, because of the endemic corruption in Nelson Mandela Bay and in the Eastern Cape generally. By now, certainly when you talk of ANC politics, My understanding is that it is even tied up now with the gangsters, the gangs, actually, the criminal gangs that are there. So the whole picture there, you cannot talk about the changes in Nelson Mandela Bay without combining corruption, criminality, and non-performance. So that there are those who are fighting corruption and there are those who are promoting it in Nelson Mandela Bay.
So when it comes to then making distinctions around particularly characterizing what then are the features of any particular coalition, how do we as the members of the public begin to make those characterizations, because we're not privy to everything that is taking place behind the scenes? So yes, it could be very well that it's easy to say an ANC government would be corrupt simply because of the allegations that have existed. But how are we to know that any other party would be different?
There are problems. Obviously, we also have to learn politics ourselves as the public. But unfortunately, by the time coalitions are being formed, it is after the election, which means by and large, you and I have already voted. Voting in a way that does not even tell us what type of coalition will eventually emerge. So the politicians make the coalitions amongst themselves. For a moment, let us assume that Herman Mashaba was telling the truth and accurate in what he said. When he said that they warned the DA, first of all, not to bring in the PA into the coalition. The PA is led by Gayton McKenzie, who openly tells everyone that he conducts his political work opportunistically, doesn't consider ideology or anything else. He considers jobs, power, rents and cents, jobs for his people, and so on and so forth. So when you bring a person who says that in public into a coalition who's not guided by any principle at all, you are opening yourself to dishonest persuasion. Secondly, our coalitions become weak, and we can know this. There are two parties that I think are weakening coalitions in South Africa. It is the DA and the ANC. Because these two parties have got a mistaken view that they are the elder brothers or the senior brothers or even the bosses of any coalition that they form. And then their job is to dominate the coalition in any direction that they want to dominate. And that in turn creates problems further down the road. Bear in mind, for instance, in Joburg, that the ANC has got 33% and its historical performance has been declining in the elections. The DA has got 26. So none of them has actually got any right to think that they are a boss of anybody. That destabilizes. So, for instance, in the present case, the DA refused to allow the IFP to be the speaker, when it was clear that it was strategic to create peace in the council to put the IFP candidate as the speaker. But the DA, because they wanted to boss everybody around, made a political mistake in the political chessboard and produced this negative result that they've produced now.
Let's then try and look at what the future can look like. There are those that have suggested that outside of the current legislation, we need something else, a framework of sort that will inform and help keep coalition governments together, at least for the 5-year term of local government. Is that the future? Is that where we need to be looking for solutions?
Yes, I think that the politicians and the political party need to understand that the days of a dominant political party are over. Humility and human cooperation in politics is the future of that. Now, as to how you structure that and what rules you write about it, it's another story. But you must remember that we have some of the most fabulous, most thorough, most clear rules, such as the Public Finance Management Act, the Municipal Finance Management Act. We've got those laws and regulations. And those laws have not prevented billions upon billions upon billions of our money from being stolen. Because the very people who enter the public sector Their hearts, their consciences are dead, their hearts are dark, they are in there for the wrong reasons, and they will try every known trick to bypass anything. So right now, the spirit that Mandela identified of criminality, of opportunism and careerism, that spirit lingers over our political industry, if I may even call it that. So that is the thing that we need to start to address and say there's a certain type of person who should not be in our politics, over and above the rules. There are people who are mercenaries. There are people who cannot be trusted. There are people who don't believe in principles. There are people who don't believe in any type of morality or ethics who are currently involved in our politics. And there are certain types of people who need to be training a new type of politician.
When we look at the state of affairs right now, we're barely a year into, the first year of this current term. So one can only wonder then what lies ahead over the next 4 years. And there are those who suggest that Johannesburg in many ways also sets the tone for what happens in the rest of the country. In that breath then, what are your expectations over how long even somebody like Dada Morero will be able to last in the position as mayor?
I think that the DA, before the voting today, was very greedy and unstrategic. But it's not a small matter to lose the wealthiest city in Africa. It's not a small matter. So I would expect that the DA is going to enter into a period of repentance and try to create a restoration with its partners. And if they do that, then there could be a counter coup, if you like, against Morero. So, I think the PA might not be party to that anymore, because I think they cannot be trusted. I think they might be ousted as well in terms of the new coalition, if it is revived. So I would expect that the DA in particular, because it is the one that is holding the most crucial coalitions in South Africa right now in terms of metros, that their philosophy and attitude, which needs to change to one of humility and being able to accommodate other people, is going to change. Otherwise, they are the ones who are going to be the authors of chaos in South Africa, other than those who use dishonest persuasion in politics.
Political analyst Sandile Swana will leave it there for tonight. Thanks for your insights on this conversation.